For those of you who caught the last segment, this is a painting that I was referring to where from a distance and angle, and that's something I think people need to do when they look at these paintings, is you need to see them up close to appreciate the detail, but to stand back, because when you stand back is really when you get the totality of the imagery and really get the feel of the water and the effect of water. And this one from a distance and also at an angle, this water is where we're standing right now, it doesn't particularly look like anything, but from a distance, you manage to actually capture how it looks like it was sort of eddying and sort of swirling a bit. And you see that a lot when you look at water aerially. And so it was very interesting because these two paintings don't have any people or anything else in them, it's just the water. So that's why I wanted to kind of note these. But then you also made a comment that I think is very noteworthy that I want you to describe about them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, these are like, it's like a general shot of like seeing this scenario, the place where all these other things are happening. And they are a take on exploring, looking at the landscape at different hours of the day. So it's the same place, Cayo Arenas, in the Dominican Republic, which is like a sand dune that comes out of the water like that. It's offshore. You have to get in, and as you arriving, you see these. But when you get in there, like at 12:30, 1 p.m., the sun is like boom, 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 giving you this color. But then the same water at 6:30 p.m. give you these colors, these grays, when the sun is already taking it easy, going to sleep by the sea.
Right. No, and it captures that. I mean, this is definitely darker, and the water's behaving differently. Probably less activity in terms of people in it. So these are probably natural sort of swirlings or something that's going on that you captured. But it was sort of interesting how you, like I said, it really dawned on me to point out to people that looking at your paintings from a distance is really important, and from different angles. And when I selected these, and even when I curated this, I was actually kind of going for scale and color difference, and it wasn't until afterwards I realized, I thought, I wonder if these are the same location, because you can see that, because rarely do you do water that isn't tethered to the land in some way, and these you can see that little bit of beach, and that's what made me think, oh, these might be similar, but I didn't pay that much attention. Like I said, I always curate aesthetically, so I always sort of curate. When I select the work, I select it because it's a body of work and I curate it, and it's a little bit broader consideration. But then when you're putting it in the space, I try and have it be dynamic and didactic at the same time, but always aesthetic. So scale shifts, color, is important, and then looking at a room from each angle in terms of the dialogue when people are standing. So
exactly,
it takes a while, especially in a rectangular room like this, to curate something, because you have to look at it from every position and think about how when people are walking in or walking away, how they look at it. But so that was really interesting about these two, and I'm glad we selected these, because most of the other ones, they don't look like they have anything in them, but there's two that do, that have fish, and there's the one that we did talk about that was the ink wash on a very smooth surface. But so that's what I think is really nice about this show and about this body of work is it's not myopic. It's not one thing. It's not unidimensional, because of the fact that you do play with many different. Well, first of all, scale, and you play with things with and without people or some sort of an object, a focus in it. So you're looking at sort of like a landscape effect, but then you're also then looking at it more intimately or personally. But then there's also these in-depth sort of observations of the biology and things that are going on underneath. But then again, as we talked about, you sort of layer in this, in some of them, when they're a little bit smaller and you sort of exploring your earlier techniques and things like that. It's interesting how you then bring in other imagery and other things for people to sort of ponder and think about. And so there is a richness in both the visual richness, but also in terms of content. So I think, for something that's been going on for 14 years, I think you've been, in terms of this series, there's a lot you can do with this
Yeah.
subject matter.
but also, for me as an artist, like doing these kind of explorations, it brings me back to my ancestors, as I call it, the other artists that were exploring this dialogue with nature through painting, and like. Monet is a classical
When you
one.
mentioned Van Gogh and the haystacks. And,
Well, Monet was doing those haystacks
and looking at
at different hours of the day.
yeah, because everything responds totally differently.
Exactly,
depending
yeah.
on the light and moisture.
Yeah,
Humidity has a huge effect on how color behaves.
And also, there is, again, going back to the impressionist kind of thing, since my agenda is more like spiritual and romantic way, of dealing with it, I don't have, again, how can I explore these ideas without the technical prowess and bravura? It's the same surfaces, but I'm still connecting with the curiosity of looking at the same place at different hours of the day and how that behave in terms of painting, and color, and chromatic. So they're more atmospheric. And
a lot of people have initially described these, I think earlier on, as sort of landscape. And they are to a certain degree like these, where you are just sort of capturing something at a certain time of day, and there isn't really any content. But I think, that was earlier on. I think you'd only been 2 years into this series, but as you look at it now, you've clearly gone beyond that. I mean, there's so much more than a landscape painting, because you, I think, have, as we were talking about before we even went on film, there's something about the water, I think, why these are so successful is because you transcend just the concept of landscape or water. There's something that's sort of transcendent about water to you, or there's some sort of a metaphysical aspect. You mentioned spirituality or something like that. But I think there is something about water that is sort of like birth, rebirth, rejuvenation, meditation. We all tend to use water a lot of times as sort of an anchor or a release. Humans just naturally do. There's something about the sound. There's just something about the visual. There's something about the smell when you're at the sea. They're all trigger things in people. Yeah. And so it's full of symbols and references for all of us. Historical, emotional, or whatever, because everybody remembers different times when they've engaged with water. And so I think it's a powerful element of nature that you've sort of selected, but you come by it naturally, because you were born there and you're just surrounded by water, so it of course becomes a huge part of who you are.
And some of my earliest memories as a child that discovered that my vocation was in the art occur in the water. For instance, I remember I must have been 8 or 9, and I was looking in Samaná, which is the peninsula where my family is from, which is the Atlantic Ocean is in one way, in one side of the island, and then in the other side is the Caribbean Sea. So there's this peninsula, like a fork that comes out. And then I was looking at what you were saying before, that you see these other colors, and I thought that the water was actually that color. And I got in, and when I look at it, the color was not there. It was an illusion. I was like, that's really magical. How did all these things happen? Like, you're seeing these amazing colors, but they're not really there.
Right.
And again, it reminds me to that quote from Jasper Jones, the things that the mind thinks it knows. Yeah. But they're not really there. It's like a mirage. It's like they're there, but they're not.
And the colors are there, and that's the sort of the interesting thing about the adjacency.
But it has to do with the light.
Color. Yeah, exactly. And how your eye mixes these colors. Your mind mixes what the eye is seeing, and it happens, and you can't even control it. It just happens.
And they change it by the second.
Yeah,
like,
it changes all the time, and depending on how you move or shift, or the, like I even said, is like the humidity, the moisture in the air affects the refraction of the light.
Yeah.
So it's sort of amazing, and as you get older and you pay more attention to it, you understand
Yes,
the physics of it. You know, it's explainable, but there's something that's nice about the magical revelation that we all have when we're younger, and so.
But I remember that was one moment that I realized I'm gonna have to explore this a little
Yeah.
farther, and
Well,
and
it worked.
40 years later,
It
I'm
worked.
here doing that.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've covered a lot of territory on this ground. I hope people have enjoyed seeing the range of work, and I sure hope people see it in person. If not, we obviously will have a digital catalog. We have these videos. There's lots of images on the website. But anyway, we appreciate you coming, Julio, and
Thank you.
you for letting us have this exhibition.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Take care.